Hi everyone. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you a simple question. Why do we live? Why do we live? What is our purpose on earth? Why are we present? Actually, the your simple answer would be to breathe, maybe to enjoy. You can enjoy life with friends and family, and you can enjoy doing things that you want. You have certain hobbies. Everyone has certain kinds of hobbies. Why do we live? We live to breathe, we live to enjoy, we live to eat good food, we live to have good company and an overall good life. This is what gives our life purpose and meaning. So now my main purpose of asking this question is, why do you study biology? Every day we go to school, every day we are studying in tuition or we are studying for a test. But my question is, why do you study biology? What is its purpose? What will studying biology help us in? Does it have any value in life? So let's get started, and your answer will get answered one by one. So if we talk about biology, it comes from the term science. Now I know what you're thinking. It is very easy that the word biology comes from science because science is clearly divided into physics, chemistry, and biology. So biology comes from science. Yes, it is correct. It is partially correct. I'm not saying that it is wrong, but there are two ways of answering this question actually. Science, if you ask what is science, one can reply science is systematic, comprehensive, investigative exploration of nature's cause and effects. But this may get very hard and complicated. So if anyone asks me what is science, my simple reply is that science is the basis of existence of beings. Existence of beings, be it living, be it non-living. Here L stands for living, not NL stands for non-living. I'm going to be using abbreviations for the most of the time because it clearly helps us to shape time and clearly you can understand what it is. So science is the basis of existence of beings, made living or non-living, and their interaction with the environment they live in. So science is the basis of existence of living beings or non-living beings and their interaction with their environment. So what does it mean actually? Say for example, we have a block. We have a block or a wooden log. Say for example, if we apply a force F, say let us assume that the box or a wooden log or has a mass m. So if I ask you what will be the acceleration that you have applied a force on this log, what will be the acceleration of this log? Your simple answer would be force is equal to mass into acceleration. So acceleration would be force into mass. So clearly you can understand that it is a branch of physics. This simple sum was a branch of physics or a part of physics or a simple part of physics because which was in turn a part of science because it clearly involved the interaction between the force and the object, which is the wooden log or the block. So now we have talked about physics. Let us come to chemistry. So how chemistry involves interaction? Chemistry actually, say for example, we take a reaction Cu plus H2SO4, CuSO4 plus H2. Okay. So here clearly copper is more reactive than hydrogen, so it displaces hydrogen and forms copper sulfate and hydrogen. So why we tell that it is an interaction? Because here clearly copper reacts with the molecule of H2SO4. One molecule of copper is reacting with one molecule of H2SO4 to form one molecule of copper sulfate and one molecule of hydrogen. I have not balanced this reaction, but say for example each of the reactant and the product side have one molecule each. So clearly it involves interaction between the molecules. So it is a branch of chemistry, and chemistry also involves interaction. So now let us come to the main part, which is biology, which is the main reason why I am trying to explain you all this. Is now if any student or one of your friend ask you what is biology, biology is actually the basis of existence of living beings. Now in simple terms, if anyone asks you what is biology, you will say that biology is story. Now he may reply, what you are saying, how can biology be story? So biology is actually story. Yes, you have heard me right, biology is story. Biology is the story of life on earth. Biology is the story of living organisms on earth. Biology is the story of evolution of living organisms on earth, and every organisms of present, past and future are linked to one another by sharing of common genetic material but to varying degrees. Now this is actually not said by me, this is said by the textbook of NCERT, The Living World, chapter 1, page number 5, and the last para. I am able to say this because I have applied rapid revision in my studying method, which I will be teaching or discussing later on. But clearly, biology is the story. It represents the story of life on earth. It is the story of evolution of living organisms on earth. Say humans, how have humans evolved? Humans have first evolved from apes. Apes have evolved to monkeys. Monkeys have evolved to humans. So it is clearly a story. And in this evolution process, clearly there are many species of apes which have evolved, and this was a long process, and clearly there are many species of monkeys and many species of humans. So this whole thing was a long process of evolution, and this was actually a whole story, which is very interesting. So the biology subject is very interesting if you actually know why we are studying biology and what is its importance. Now if you step out of your house, you will look around and you will see a large variety of living organisms, be it potted plants, be it insects, be it birds, your pets, or any other animals and plants. There are also several organisms that you cannot see with your naked eye, but they are actually all around you. If you are to increase the area that you make observation in, the range and the variety of organisms that you see would probably increase. Obviously, if you were to visit a dense forest, you would probably see a much greater variety and kinds of living organisms, because forests are clearly known to have more species of organisms present. Now the thing is, why I am saying all this? Actually, the number of species that are present on Earth range from between 1.7 to 1.8 million. Clearly, this is not a small number and is a very huge number, and it is not constant at all means. By all means, it is constantly increasing. The number of species that are present on Earth is constantly increasing. Here, the upside arrow represents increasing. So the number of species are constantly increasing, and this species of large number of biodiversity organism actually refers to a term called as biodiversity, or the number and the types of organism present on Earth. We should always remember that as we explore new areas, and we also explore new species, so the number that is 1.7 to 1.8 million is not constant and is increasing day by day, year by year. So why I am telling all this? So let us assume that I am drawing two species in the board, this one and say for example this is a snake. How we are able to distinguish that this one is a plant and this one is an animal? Clearly, this one has features that represents that this one is a plant, and this one has features that clearly indicates that this one is an animal. So there are many features that help you classify that help you classify and group this species into plant and group this species into animal. So what are the process that help you classify that this one is a plant and this one is an animal? Actually, many years ago, there was a problem. The problem was that there are many species, but people were not able to distinguish like us that this one is plant and this one is animal, that this one is insect and this one is dog. So there was very confusion. So came a system known as taxonomy. Taxon represents rank. Taxon means rank, and nomy means study. It is actually, taxonomy means study of rank. Rank of what? Is it your school grade rank? No, it is not your school grade rank. Rank of actually animals. Say for example, we take dog. It is a rank of a species that is grouped under the species called animals. Say for example, in dog we have Alsatian. It is also a rank that comes under the animals. So here the bigger rank is of animals, and in animals the smaller rank is of dog, and the smallest rank is Alsatian. So Alsatian is an example of dog, and dog is in turn an example of an animal. So these represent taxa or taxon or different ranks at different levels. Dog, Alsatian and animal represent ranks at different levels. So that is why they are termed as taxon or taxa. So what comes under taxonomy? What is taxonomy? You may ask now, because it all may seem very confusing. So taxonomy has actually three parts that help us in identifying or classifying an organism. That is, the first one is characterization. The second one is identification. The third one is classification. And the fourth one is nomenclature. Now it all might be getting very jumbled and confusing in your mind, but trust me, it is very easy. So this all falls under the taxonomy, or the study of ranks or classification of organisms. So first is characterization. When I drew the plant and animal, clearly you saw the characters of plant. That is, it had leaves, it had branches, it had a flower, and snake. When I drew the snake, it had characters like it had a spinal cord, it had a mouth, it had eyes. So you are able to identify the characters. Next comes identification. So when you see a plant, you identify that this is some characteristic. So this is called identification. And next comes classification. So how are you able to group that this one is plant and this one is animal? This falls under classification. And the nomenclature part actually explains that why we call plants plants and why we call animals animals. So I'm going to explain basically all of this. Before explaining, as I have told you, that biology is clearly the story of life on earth, story of evolution of what. So what is the story of evolution of human knowledge that helps us to classify organisms? What was the story millions of years ago, hundreds of years ago? So hundreds of years ago, people were not as intelligent, and there was clearly not any proper method of studying. So first came a scientist named Linnaeus. His full name was actually Carolus Linnaeus. He gave the two kingdom classification. K stands for kingdom, C stands for classification. So he actually divided organisms into two groups. First one is Plantae and the second one is Animalia. He distinguished organisms into two groups because first one, Plantae, had cell wall which the animal group did not have. The first one, Plantae, had features like leaves, stems, flowers, which the animal group did not have. Animal group had chordates, some were non-chordates, did not have spinal cord, which the plants did not have. So actually, at that time it was thought that all organisms comes under two groups, that is Plantae and Animalia only. But within time, as time passed, people began asking questions about that. People were doubting that actually only two kingdoms were available, that is Plantae and Animalia. So then came the three kingdom classification. After Carolus Linnaeus, then came the three kingdom classification, which was given by scientist Ernst Haeckel. This was given by scientist Ernst Haeckel. He actually classified organisms into animals, plants, and Protista. This was another group which was included later on because there were some species which had cell membrane, but the cell membrane composition of the cell membrane was not same. Say plants had cell wall, plants had cell wall which was made up of cellulose, and Protista had cell wall which was not made of cellulose, which helped to classify organisms that were divided into animals, plants, and Protista. So these three groups had three distinguishing features that helps them to classify into animals, plants, and Protista. So next came the four kingdom classification, which was given by H.F. Copeland. Under the four kingdom classification, there were many distinguishing groups such as Monera, such as Protista, such as Metazoa, and Metaphyta. These are not that important, so we will not be discussing about that, because what is generally accepted today in this day and age is the five kingdom classification, which was given by scientist R.H. Whittaker. It was given in the year 1969, in which organisms were classified into five groups. What were these groups, you will ask? Now my answer is that organisms were classified into Monera, Protista, fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Clearly, there are distinguishing features between Monera, Protista, fungi, Plantae, and Animalia that enabled the scientist R.H. Whittaker to classify them into different groups, into five different groups. So students, Now I'm going to be explaining a process. Now I'm going to be explaining, it is a process and I call it a technique. It is called the zoom in and the zoom out technique. So basically, you are quite aware of this as you are already using our social media and phones in this age. So students, you must already be aware of this technique, because when we open a photo, we usually use this motion of our hands to zoom in to enlarge a photo, and when the photo is enlarged, we use this motion of our hand to make it smaller back to normal size. So what we are doing, actually we are going to apply this in science also. So this will actually make us our study easier, and it will help us remember concepts properly and betterly and in an easy and very fun way. So how to use it, I'm going to be discussing that. So let us dive into that. So as I have told you that R.H. Whittaker classified organisms into 5 groups, that is Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia. So these are the 5 groups of organisms that R.H. Whittaker helped classify organisms into. So let us zoom in on the Monera. You may ask, sir, let us zoom in on Monera. Let us see what organisms falls under the Monera. So let us zoom in on that. We use our hands motion like that. So let us see what falls under Monera. Actually, Monera is the group of bacteria. It has 2 groups, Eubacteria and true, which is the true bacteria, or Archaebacteria. What distinguished Eubacteria from Archaebacteria is that Archaebacteria have special cell wall or cell membrane that helps them to survive in extremely hot weather condition. For example, methanogen, which are present in the gut of ruminant animals such as cows. These are some examples of Archaebacteria. And Eubacteria, which you are already aware of, there can be different shapes of bacteria such as rod-shaped coccus, spherical coccus, rod-shaped bacillus, spiral-shaped spirillum, which you are already aware of. So now let us zoom in. Let us apply the zoom in effect on Protista. So you may ask, sir, what is available? What organism falls under Protista? So let us apply the motion of our hands to zoom in on Protista. So let us see what organism fall under Protista. Actually, the Protista has 5 groups: chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime molds, and protozoans. So since I have already told you that biology is the story of evolution of Earth, it is the story of evolution of organisms present on Earth. So as you have seen, here is Monera, here is Protista, it is fungi, it is Plantae, and here it is Animalia. So what I am doing is classifying the Protista into 5 groups, which are chrysophyte, dinoflagellate, euglenoid, slime molds, and protozoan. So you may ask, how this one is a story? Please explain us how this one is a story. So here, if I draw an arrow like this actually represents the evolutionary arrow, because the Monera were the most primitive organisms, and then came Protista. Monera evolved into Protista. Protista has some features which Monera does not have, which gives it advantage over Monera. Now comes fungi. Now fungi has some advantages over Protista, which Protista does not have, but fungi has. So here the evolutionary line is constantly increasing, and next came Plantae. The Plantae has features which fungi did not have, and which helped plants to have some advantages over fungi. So next comes animals. In Animalia, it has some advantages over Plantae, which help them in the evolution. So this is what the evolutionary line represents. The evolution is constantly growing on. It is a constant process. And if you see under Protista also, there is an evolutionary line in chrysophyte, dinoflagellate, euglenoid, slime mold, and protozoan. This is the evolutionary line. So first came the chrysophyte, then came the dinoflagellate, euglenoid, slime mold, and protozoan. Actually, chrysophytes were the first kind of protistan organism. These were evolutionary very primitive. So there came some need of new features which helped the organism to classify in better, to survive in better environmental condition. Then came dinoflagellate, then came euglenoid, slime mold, and protozoa. So every organism, every classification that you see, always remember there is always an evolutionary line which is gradually increasing, and the organisms which are present at the first, here in Protista, chrysophyte present in the first. So clearly chrysophyte are the most primitive organisms, and here in Monera, Protista, fungi, Plantae, and Animalia, Monera are present in the first. So clearly Monera is the most primitive one. So students, as for as for your standard, Monera and Protista and fungi, these groups will not be useful to you. So I'm going to be talking about Plantae and Animalia. So let us dive into Plantae and Animalia. So what group falls under Plantae? So if you apply the zoom in effect on Plantae, let us see what group it has. It has algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperm and angiosperm. It has algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperm. It has angiosperm. So as I have already said, so in any classification of organism, you should always remember an evolutionary line is always present. So first I have written algae, then bryophyta, then pteridophyta, gymnosperm, angiosperm. I have not written angiosperm first. I have not written gymnosperm first. I have not written bryophyta first or pteridophyta first. If I had written that, it would be wrong, because this clearly represents an evolutionary line. First plant that were existed were the algae, then came the bryophyta, an evolutionary line, because clearly bryophyta had some features that helped them to survive in new environmental condition which algae did not have. That is why the algae went extinct. That is, then came bryophyta. So why pteridophyta came? Because bryophyta had some features which pteridophyta did not have. Pteridophyta had some features which bryophyta did not have, which helped them to survive in new conditions. So the bryophyta went extinct and pteridophyta came. Then gymnosperms came, because gymnosperms had some advantageous features which the pteridophyta did not came. At the end, we have angiosperm, which is the modern plants today we know, the flowering plants, which had some features that the gymnosperm did not have. So clearly in the evolutionary stand, we can see that angiosperm are the most evolutionary advanced plants. Now let us dive into animals. If you see the kingdom Animalia, it is actually a very large group. Why am I saying it is a large group? Because it has many phylum. So you may be asking, what is a phylum? So before diving into kingdom Animalia, I will discuss with you where the word phylum comes from. Actually, for classifying any organism, we use some, what I have told you earlier, that we use some rank called taxons. So there are various taxons which represent rank of organisms, which helps us to identify what they are and in what rank they are present. So for any classification of organism, we have kingdom, we have phylum, we have class, we have order, we have genus, and we have species. So for any classification of organism, we have kingdom, phylum, class, order, family. Between order there will be family. We have kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus and species. So why I am saying this? I am saying this because, as I have already told you, that organisms are 5 kingdom classifications. Organisms are divided into Monera, Protista, fungi and Plantae and Animalia. So you may ask, what is Monera, what is Protista, what is fungi, what is Plantae, what is Animalia? These are actually kingdom. And now since 1 minute earlier I have told you about classification of plants, that plants were divided into algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperm and angiosperm. So your question would be, what is algae, what is bryophyta, what is pteridophyta, what is this? So since Plantae is kingdom, these groups falls under the phylum. So algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperm, angiosperm, these are all the phylum of the kingdom Plantae. So now we'll dive back into kingdom Animalia. So students, as I have already told you, kingdom Animalia itself is a very large kingdom and it has various phylums. It is a very large kingdom because it has various phylums. So what are the phylums? Let us see. Let us apply the zoom in effect again. It has Porifera, it has Coelenterata, it has Ctenophora, it has Platyhelminthes, it has Ascohelminthes, it has Arthropoda, it has Annelida, it has Mollusca, it has Echinodermata, it has, then comes Hemichordata, then comes Chordata. So you may all be very confused and very jumbled why these many classification of organisms are needed for Animalia. Actually, there are many species of animals. There are more species of animals on this earth present, more than plants. So that is why there are many features which were grouped into different classes, which are grouped into different phylums: Porifera, Coelenterata, Ctenophora, Platyhelminthes, Ascohelminthes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata, Hemichordata and Chordata. So what I use for this large number of phylum is a simple trick. The trick, now you may ask, what is the trick? The trick is, please call, I am going to be writing the trick, so I am going to erase this. The trick What is the trick for remembering all these phylum of Animalia? The trick is, please call and call. Please ask any army my ECH. So we are going to be using the first word, the first letter of this word as the mnemonics. So we are going to be using mnemonics because this will be very easy for us to remember. So from please we will be using the word P. From call we will be using the word C. Here A, C, P, A, M, E, C, H. So what are these? Platyhelminthes, Coelenterata, Ctenophora, Aschelminthes, Annelida, Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinodermata, Chordata, and Hemichordata. So clearly, using this trick, please call and call. Please ask any army my ECH. Using this trick, you can remember all the phylum of kingdom Animalia. So students, this is all about the classification of organisms and the nomenclature which I have taught you today. So now if we dive into the zoom in and zoom out effect, let us apply the zoom in effect on an organism. Say for example, we take a human. Human, it is an organism. It is an organism. If we zoom in on the organism part, we have many organ system like skeletal system, nervous system, digestive system, respiratory system, excretory system, circulatory system, many other things. So if we zoom in further on the organ system, what does it comprise of? Organ system actually comprises of many organs like liver, lung, heart, kidney, muscle, tissues, and many others. So if we zoom in on organs part, organs is made up of tissues. Group of tissues comprise an organ. So tissues, what are tissues? If we zoom in on the tissues, it is actually made up of cell. If we zoom in on the cell, I'm pretty sure that you have studied up to cell, but if you zoom in on the cell, it has further made up of stuff called cellular organelles. Cellular organelles are the entities which are present on the cell like nucleus, microbody, ribosome, Golgi body, Golgi apparatus, cell membrane, cell wall. These are all the stuff present on cell. So if we zoom in on the cellular organelles, it is composed of many molecules. What does the molecules comprise of? Molecules comprise of atoms, and these atoms further comprise of subatomic particles called electron, proton, and neutron. So clearly, when I say the term organism, you should be able to apply the zoom in effect, and you should be able to remember all these terms, that organism is made up of organ system is in turn made up of organs, which is made up of tissues, and group of tissues is made up of and tissues itself is made up of cell, and cell itself is made up of cellular organelle itself is made up of molecule and atoms. So if we apply the zoom out effect, you can apply the opposite thing also. So group of atoms make molecules, group of molecules make cellular organelles, group of cellular organelles make cell, group of cell make a tissue, group of tissue make an organ, group of organ make organ system, and finally it makes an organism. That is why the skill of zoom in and zoom out effect is very important for your visualization, because it will help you to remember concept easily and apply them in your exam in the least amount of time, because saving time in exam is very essential for success.